If you were offered everything you ever wanted, would you accept? Hi everyone, Ken here. Welcome to this house. Today we are exploring the mansion of Emilie Grigsby, or more importantly, how she earned the nickname the American Princess. It's important to first understand where Emilie came from. She was born into a dwindling fortune. Her father died when she was still very young, and her mother Susan tried her best to keep up appearances. Susan could no longer afford to hold on to her upper middle class lifestyle without her husband's income, so she came up with a scandalous plan to make her own fortune in the shadows. First, she sent her two kids away to school. Her son Braxton would attend St. Mary's Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, while Emilie would attend an Ursuline convent in Brown County, Ohio. Meanwhile, Susan spent what little money she had to open a high-end brothel in Cincinnati. The money came pouring in, and Susan was able to afford to keep the family house and continue sending her children to private school. The charade of a wholesome family would go on for many years until Susan was discovered to have been running a brothel. She was shunned from society, and the nuns at Emilie's school informed her about her mother's business dealings. By this time, Emilie was becoming a formidable young lady at the age of 16. She was keen to American and European history, was cultured in the arts, and could maintain a conversation with any member of high society. As Emilie began to blossom, she became the talk of the town. Ellen Dunlap Hopkins, a member of New York's high society, wrote about her. "I think she was the most beautiful woman I ever saw. Her eyes were brown, her hair had the reddish gleam of gold, her face sad in expression, her complexion like alabaster. Her form was beautiful. She had the manner of an empress." Emilie had been refining herself for her entire life, yearning to be at the top of society. So it came as no surprise that when her brother Braxton got his first job with millionaire Charles Yerkes, that she saw an opportunity. She began flirting her way into the upper echelon, catching the attention of every prominent young gentleman. Charles Yerkes' son, Charles Jr., was so enamored with her that within months of their meeting, gossip had spread, speculating about an impending engagement. But Emilie had bigger plans. Charles Jr.'s father was worth $25 million, or the modern-day equivalent of nearly $900 million. Even though Charles Sr. was married and Emilie was only 16, she had noticed the perverted gaze of the old man. When she glanced back, she was not disgusted, but instead saw opportunity. Emilie was said to have been in love with Jr., but he wasn't the one with the large pocketbook. She would return Charles Sr.'s glances, and in no time, she became his mistress, much to the chagrin of his heartbroken son. Charles was in the process of uprooting his life to move to Manhattan and would not leave without Emilie. Of course, the affair had to be kept under wraps for sake of his reputation, so he built her own personal palace just 2 blocks away from his. Emilie's house would be built at the corner of Park Avenue and 67th. It would be only 20 feet deep, but 100 feet wide and 5 stories tall. The imposing facade was composed of white granite set below carved stone balustrade with a tiled roof boasting peaked dormers, cresting, and finials. No expense was spared for his secret lover. By the time the palace was finished, Emilie was now a young adult. Regarded as the most cultured woman of her age, Charles trusted her to decorate her own house and promised her the world. Emilie held him to that promise. She set out to acquire antiques from every culture along with art from the masters. Lillian Barrett said about Emilie's house, "Her home was indeed beautiful, not the gorgeous, dazzling type that vaunts its wealth, nor the soulless kind that argues the decorator, but beautiful with a beauty that bespoke an innate delicacy in its owner, a good taste that was the outcome not of a few years' education and travel, but of the culture of centuries." The library was decorated with wood paneling on the walls, with hidden doors to conceal her collection of rare and expensive books, each book having been rebound in leather and stored out of sight. The dining room was surrounded by wainscoting and decorated with Flemish tapestries. She had acquired other tapestries that were already several centuries old at the time and had them cut up to upholster her high-backed chairs. The house boasted painted canvas wall panels, with one of the guest rooms containing 15 needleback tapestries which she paid $15,000 apiece for, or the modern-day equivalent of about $500,000 apiece. More stunning than the guest room was her music room. It expanded across the entire 4th floor and contained some of the best in her collection. One of the chairs was inlaid with ivory, too brittle to ever be sat in, but stunning nonetheless. The centerpiece was an ornately carved Vernis Martin piano, with every visible part having been gold-leafed. Each room had its own presence. Another bedroom had been nicknamed the Rose Room and was furnished in the Empire style, bearing the insignia of Napoleon Bonaparte. her own bedroom would be more subdued and timeless even by today's standards. The wall panels were crafted from old-growth walnut which had been imported from Italy and contrasted by her prized collection of blue and white Chinese porcelains. Set poetically in the center of the house, above the stair landing, was a life-size portrait of Emilie herself. She continued to hold dear her mother who was still running a brothel, though having her mother involved in the seedy profession pained her, so she paid to have her relocated to be with her in New York. Emilie now had the house of her dreams, and the stage was set for her to enter high society, and she did so in fashion. She obtained a box in the Metropolitan Opera House and impressed the most elite of society. Gossip spread about her travels in Europe, about how she would rent entire trains to haul her antiques as she went country to country, acquiring the rarest and most expensive pieces for her collection. Everything was going well. She was the most beautiful woman in high society with seemingly unlimited funds. She was bold and could confidently engage any man in the room in academic discussion. She was regarded as the best and brightest in New York social circles, but people wanted to know, who is this mysterious young lady? Why is she more educated than the men who attended Harvard? Why is she wealthy, and where did the money come from? Emilie kept the mystery alive for as long as possible, adding to the fire of gossiping conversations, until one day, when she was discovered. News broke that her mother owned a brothel, and she was the mistress of Charles Yerkes. Emilie was done for. No one wanted to associate with her. She had been cut off from New York's high society. Emilie knew she could do better than New York's high society. She wanted to be world class, but this would have to wait just a little while. Charles had become very ill and spent his last days in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel instead of in his home. He did not permit his wife to see him, but instead requested that Emilie cater to him as a nurse. He passed away, not leaving anything to Emilie in his will, but it did not really matter. He had spoiled Emilie over the years and had ensured that no matter how much she spent, she would never run out of money. Emilie set out for London, where she would be welcomed into the social circles of old money and royalty. She became friends with dukes and duchesses, lords and ladies, being invited to the most exclusive dinners with the world's most elite. The Times ran the headline, "Ignored here wins royals," with the article saying, now she can boast that Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle are her domain by right of conquest, and she snaps her fingers at the plutocrats who hit her and turned their back upon her. She was now in Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace, cozying up to the royal family. Emilie became close with Princess Mary, who was 14 at the time. Princess Mary was quite fond of Emilie, because she would treat her as a little girl and was not intimidated by her status. The royal family took notice of this and welcomed her with open arms. She was the perfect role model for Princess Mary, a confident woman of conviction, class, and elegance, articulate and educated, gracefully demanding respect. Both Emilie and her mother were invited to the coronation as the special guests of the king and queen. The papers in New York reported this, and it did not take long for word to spread across the pond about Emilie's mother's shady business. The royal family, dismayed by the news, put out a statement about Emilie's attendance at the coronation saying her presence was officially unknown, as they began to distance themselves from her. Emilie returned to New York to sell her palace, antiques, and art collection, which included Claude Monet's Highlands of the French coast. She returned to London with an exorbitant amount of cash. While her new friends were initially shocked by the news, they quickly learned to overlook her mother's past and welcomed Emilie back into society. In 1926, the Grigsby mansion was torn down to make way for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Building designed by York and Sawyer. Emilie's old life was officially gone. Charles was dead and her mansion had been demolished. She would live out the rest of her life in London, staying naturally beautiful, her skin never showing her age and her hair retaining its golden copper glow. Despite her looks and the lifelong interest from royal suitors, she never did marry. She was said to have died happy in 1964. Her dreams had matured as she did, and so they changed as she did. She accomplished her goal of climbing to the top of society, and along the way, she made real friends. She read throughout the morning and laughed with friends over a bottle of wine in the evenings. Emilie was a breath of fresh air in the old money circles, and conversations were said to have been lacking for many years in the absence of the American princess. If you have been subscribed to this channel for a long time, you might have noticed that this video was a remaster of the old one. Emilie Grigsby's story is one of my favorites, and I wanted to make sure I was doing her story a justice by increasing the quality of storytelling and the presentation itself. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button and leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on the American princess. I would also like to take a moment to say a very special thank you to our members whose names you can see on screen right now. I'll see you next time on This House.